So next, it is my pleasure to welcome to the stage Jennifer McRae. Jennifer McRae is a former kid from Napier near the Parongarups, gorgeous part of southwest WA. After a 30-year nursing career, she's taken a professional sidestep researching the silent histories of Western Australia. And today, Jennifer will be talking to This Will Be My Last Act on Earth, an Ernest William Carter piece. Please welcome Jennifer. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Thanks so much for choosing to come and listen to my talk. And a big hello to everyone online. And is there anyone here in the audience who is related to Ernest? Yay, hello. I want to talk to you afterwards. So the reason why I am talking about Ernest is he's basically the reason why I'm a West Australian. So we'll get to that in a minute. But I'll just give you a few slides of some background and historical context. And I'm very happy for you to correct me if I'm wrong, because this is information that I've kind of sourced from family publications, Trove, the archives, and of course you never really finish researching someone. There's always more information to know about a person. So very keen to learn more if anyone here knows more. Today I'd like to tell you a story about a remarkable man, Ernest William Carter. He's the reason I'm a West Australian and not a Victorian. Ernest was brave, energetic, persistent, and held family, friends, faith, and future building at the core of his daily life. He was also a man with impeccable ethics and vast generosity, but he was also human, and he was afflicted with the torturous trait of perfectionism, and he was a workaholic. And it's a lesson for all of us 120 years later that we must take time to rest and have work-life balance, and that's what keeps us healthy in the long term for ourselves and for our family. Next slide. Yes, Jean. This is a timeline I tried to put together, but in 15 years of being in Northam, Ernest achieved quite a lot and did heaps. And we'll work our way through this timeline in the next few minutes. There wasn't much that he wasn't part of, as you can see from each of those boxes. He certainly made things happen in Northam and Meckering. I love this quote. Unfortunately, it doesn't include women. It should. But the men who come to Western Australia with the intention of making it their home must be men firm of heart and stout of body, men of mind as well as muscle. And going from that photograph of Ernest, he certainly has very strong and broad shoulders and was certainly built for coming to Western Australia and giving it a go. Ern was someone who had this generosity and relentless work ethic, but he also shared it with family, extended family, and people he met along the way. And that's what I love so much about him. He seemed to be a really good man with really strong ethics and didn't seem to be swayed by any of the darker sides of being a human. This is his background. So Nathan, his dad, was from New Hampshire, and Lucy, Phoebe, his mum, was from Shropshire in England. And the two of them met within a year of both arriving in Australia and marrying. I love the anecdote about Nathan skiing to church, and apparently that was just too much fun, so he got scolded for having a fun time getting to church. And perhaps that kind of foretells the thinking that maybe life in the US and in that environment wasn't for him. So he took off to Australia for a fresh start. But there's also that possibility that because there were so many sons and the business of boat building just couldn't extend to so many sons being able to make a go of it financially. And so Lucy and Nathan are both buried here in Northam. Ernest is almost a other-sider. He probably gets here a bit earlier than most of what we would consider to other-siders to be. If you're new to this term, it's basically a wonderful way of calling someone someone from the eastern states. I get the feeling that other-siders were a little not so liked, going from the quotes above that you can read. My grandfather Alexander seemed to think it was fine. There wasn't any harassment or prejudice against him coming from Victoria. But then you read other quotes and people are kind of marginalised and not really appreciated. And then Mr. Vosper's interpretation of himself seems to be he's quite bold in his opinion that Victorians do things bigger and better and are far more clever perhaps than West Australians. So t'othersiders basically triple our West Australian population within 11 years, and it's a staggering movement of people across Australia. And the 1901 census says 1 in 5 in Western Australia are born in Victoria. Influenced by his father's youthful migration to Australia, at 26, Ernest was the first of his family to come to WA in 1893. Ernest's mobility was a calculated response to decade-long economic depression and the Federation drought, which was consuming a lot of South Australia and Victoria. And so he really made a good decision to come to WA. Things really changed financially for him thereafter. Here's some photos of Agnes and Ernest's family. This is little Aggie as a little girl and her mother, who's my ancestor. Before marrying Agnes, like many t'othersiders, Ernest arrived alone to Northam, establishing himself financially in readiness for the new wife's arrival. Northam was an important gold rush terminus, as you all know, located on the northern tip of the Great Southern Railway. Ernest secured the lucrative tender for the town's Royal Mail run between the train station and post office for £44 and 10 shillings per annum, the first of his many businesses in the Avon Valley. Ernest returns to Victoria to marry Agnes at Nahill, and the newlyweds departed Melbourne a week later, arriving at Albany on the 25th of February, 1894. This is just a quick photo of the children, the first 4 born, and Lucy and Annie are not in this photograph. Darling children. Love the photos of the kids from the turn of the century. So this is my McRae family. Ernest was the catalyst for my family to come here to Northam. They left their farm in Horsham in 1896. Alexander sold the farm and bought a farm next to Ernest in Meckering. And he bought that land for £1 an acre and secured 340 acres. And they were there for about 13 or 14 years. Alexander and Ernest were really great friends, and Ern used to always call him Uncle. Ernest's capacity for wealth acquisition and growth expands into the Temperance Hotel, which you probably all know as the I think it's like a accommodation, transition accommodation on Wellington Street. It looks very different to this photograph here. Ernest continues to diversify his northern-based business opportunities and partners with Mr. Irons as a hotel keeper and a cab proprietor in 1894. Many of the women from the extended family of Ernest's work in the hotel, and awesome time to have a business. You had thousands of people coming through Northam heading to Coolgardie for their gold-fevered intentions. And he also kind of expanded the business into equine transportation and also kind of helped funds the farm at some point as well. And so my McRae family live here at the hotel for a good few months before they're able to go out to the farm at Meckering. Okay, so the Northern Horse Bazaar is the next financial acquisition. In 1898, along with his brothers who help operate the business, located on the main street. So there's an equine livery, letting stables, and the sale of land clearing technology, including Halbert Smith's stump ploughs and the superior Chewett timber for wheelwrights. Farmers from the region, including as far away as Quairading, would buy and sell horses from the bazaar. In 1904, the same year, he successfully applied to become a Justice of the Peace and was adjudicating on all sorts of different court cases. He was able to secure the position because the Honourable Charles Edward Dempster, a parliamentarian, wrote a glowing reference to the Premier, and he said, "He is a very enterprising, energetic, straightforward man, and I believe him to be universally respected." So at that time, this is what Ernest is up to. He's running a farm, he's got 2 businesses, a young family, and he's a JP. So the guy's just gradually building more and more workload on his shoulders. Seeing an unmet need in the stock feed market, Ernest also instigates Western Australia's first chaff milling and agent business, E.W. Carter and Co., with regional depots across the state for the trade and sale of crucial stock feed. And this is a really important time in Western Australian agriculture because the state's becoming totally self-sufficient and has surplus, so we're able to sell it interstate. So Ernest really made a difference building a chaff industry because, of course, everything was horse-powered. Unfortunately, the prices for chaff was really unstable and fluctuated a lot. So it sounds like Ernest spent a lot of time trying to get the best dollar for the chaff that he was buying, and then the profit margin got narrower and narrower for him. Here's a quote. Ernest Carter made the chaff market. Very often he held the market till the farmers got much better than he could. He had all the speculators trying to make a fortune, but behind that was a grim determination to see the farmer got value for his chaff. And that was in the Northern Advertiser. And this kind of sets the scene for what follows. After significant success with the chaff market, there's a collapse, and Ernest declares bankruptcy in 1904. In September of that year, at the Commercial Hotel here in Northam, they had an extraordinary resolution, and the debtor, Ernest, was to pay 20 shillings in the pound via monthly instalments, and the first was due in October of that year, and they would continue until 1906. He was also required to pay interest, and that was £7 per annum. And he was to also mortgage all of his assets to secure the payments. So I would believe his Meckering farm would be part of that. So that's a lot of pressure for a man to carry on his shoulders. While he's still able to farm the farm, he focuses on that to try and boost productivity so he can pay back all of his debts. This is a picture of Lucy, his mum, and the farm is named after her. And she's also a bit of a legend too. I think her children really adored her, and she spent a lot of time championing them on. Another aspect to Ernest's capacity as a human being is that he was always ready to fly the flag for others who were not so well off. So this is a little quote from him in the paper. "If every Victorian in this colony donated the sum of 1 shilling, it would not be missed by them, And so he was trying to drum up a fund for the people back in Gippsland who'd suffered a horrendous bushfire. And this is a famous painting that you might be familiar with. If you're at all interested, this is a really interesting segue out of Ernest's life. And as time passes from 1904, there's this kind of gradual decline in Ernest's mental health, and his brothers were increasingly concerned, as well as Aggie. He'd always been an anxious character, and the failure of bankruptcy became all-consuming and heavily impacted his mind. He was a highly determined man, but that frenetic work ethic probably hid an undiagnosed anxiety. And things kind of started to fall apart for him. He believed that there was a conspiracy against him, and that he was going to be struck off the JP's list. And on the Wednesday before he passed away, 2 of his old Meckering friends encountered him on the street, and he claimed that they were trying to lay a trap to catch him. So he jumps on his horse and rides all the way back to Meckering that night, but he would have normally taken the train. It's 30 kilometres, so it's quite a long way to ride. And the following morning, he passes away. I'm not going to go into the details, but if you wish to, you can search up on Trove what unfolds. But the inquest is held on that same day that he's found, and friends and family all attest to these financial stresses which increasingly weighed on his shoulders. He had an excitable temperament and was a tremendous worker, never seemed to be able to sit still, was said by one. And knowing that he was so loved, each of the newspapers covered his story of his passing. And he left a note, unsigned. "This is the last act I shall do on earth. I can no longer stand up against the conspiracy that is against me. All property over after paying my debts does to my wife, Agnes, solely." So Agnes is pregnant with their daughter Lucy, and she's born after the passing of Ernest. And so the McKay family, the McCutcheons, the Draffin families, and the McRae clans all lost their guy who helped them come across and start new lives here in Australia, Western Australia. One grieving commentator captures the widespread sentiment: "Very few men have done more for the eastern agricultural areas than Mr. Carter." More than 80 carriages joined Ernest's funeral procession along the main street of Northam to the Wesleyan portion of the cemetery. So today when you walk along Fitzgerald Street, just take a few moments and just imagine what that scene would look like with 80 carriages following behind Ernest's carriage that would have been at the front. And just if any of you here have the need to, I've just got a little box where there's local supports for anyone who may have the need to reach out today after listening to my talk. So, questions, anyone? Or any feedback on other information that you might have about Ernest?
It's amazing. I'll if I can jump in.
Yeah,
Well,
sure.
We're all just sort of absorbing. What an amazing story, and it's really at the start of the story. I was thinking, how fast paced our lives are today and have become, and the contrast. Going back to looking at that scene. I have always imagined it being such a quiet, slower paced time, and perhaps it was, but it's relative, isn't it? It's so relative, and the story about Ernest really highlights the relativity of the pressure, no matter the pace or the perceived pace. And thank you for sharing these resources for to support people who are feeling that pressure. in today's fast pace.
Yeah, I think really we've, as a rural community, we have been grappling with suicide as a major health issue for a very long time, and a story kind of showcases that it really isn't a new issue, but it's certainly an issue that we're still grappling with to try and prevent. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and he wouldn't have been alone.
Of course
Certainly
not.
not. There's so many that, you know, the more we dig, the more and with what we know now,
Yeah.
it's really quite obvious what was going on for a lot of these earlier pioneers of what
That's
we've
right.
become.
And back then you would have maybe have had your religion as a way of trying to cope through those stresses, but I can imagine men weren't encouraged to particularly feel safe enough to have conversations with their friends and trusted loved ones.
Yeah. And in fact, for those of you who are in town next Monday night, there is a gentleman coming from the Shaka Project talking to this very topic.
Right.
Particularly for boys and men. So it's great that it's being talked about and the conversation is encouraged, so that there's not so many earnest
Yes.
characters out there doing battle, on their own.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Yep. Do we have any questions from the floor? Jennifer McRae, thank you so much for sharing Ernest's story. Wow. Please put your hands together again.